there's a second language out there that human beings are continually expressing, and you want to make yourself sensitive to it, because the degree that you can begin to piece together this puzzle will have tremendous power in the social realm. Understanding the people around you, not really reading what their signs, not really knowing what they're feeling or what they're thinking, puts you at an incredible disadvantage. You're like groping continually around in the darkness, and it makes you unhappy because it creates all kinds of drama in your life where you're continually misreading the people around you. You can get involved in a relationship with someone who seems very loving and giving, and then they turn out to be a raging narcissist. It creates years of trouble and trauma for you. So understanding people on a deeper level in a dimensional way is incredibly important. And what I've tried to emphasize, particularly in the laws of human nature, is that humans have two languages.
Hi, you just saw an intro there by Robert Greene on a video he did about a year ago called The Nature of Understanding Human Nature. And I thought it was very interesting. He has this concept of two languages and how many of us are not making the progress we should in our life because we understand the first language, which is obviously the language we use verbally to speak, but we're making all sorts of mistakes in our life. We're misunderstanding situations and people and putting ourselves into weak positions. So what exactly does he specifically mean? Let's take a quick look here and we'll watch this clip for a few seconds and then we'll just talk about it a little bit.
You are obsessed with one language, which is words. You are continually fixating on people's words. And everything we know about words is we can lie. I can tell you right now here on camera that I am, the most brilliant person in the universe. Or I can tell you something else, that I can dunk a basketball. I can say whatever, but it's an outright lie. I can say whatever I want. Words are actually a form that can be used for a great weapon for deception. Okay, but there's a second language that is not very much harder to express deception in. And it's not just a language of the body, it's also a language of gesture and behavior. So I want you to start thinking in this way. I want you to start thinking there's a second language out there that human beings are continually expressing, and you want to make yourself sensitive to it, because the degree that you can begin to piece together this puzzle will have tremendous power in the social realm.
So as you can see, what he's basically saying is you have the first language is words, but we can lie through words. And the second language is the nonverbal cues. And if you actually watch the video, I'll give a link down below, he actually gives a whole variety. If you ask me about nonverbal, I will normally talk about body language, how the face can never lie. If somebody tries to lie, there'll be a twitch or something there, and that'll be it. But he goes into more detail, which is fair play to him for doing that. But what I just thought was perhaps more relevant isn't so much the body language. And the body language, if you want to learn more about that, watch this video. The body language is important to see if people are perhaps screwing you or not using you well, or they're taking advantage. But I just wanted this video to talk more about the kind of bigger picture of a second language. The second language being not just my body language, I'm trying to screw you, I'm saying one thing but I mean another thing, but going a little bit, and that what he's saying is right, and you get a lot of social power when you can actually see what are people doing. So he gives the example of, does somebody really, did he smile, did their eyes smile, did they really hold your attention when they look, are their eyes dead looking, and so on and so forth. So fair enough. But what I just want to talk about a little bit deeper on this is that there are, let's say, a thing we can call the subtext. The subtext is very important. So many of us are raised in such a way that we read things exactly as they are, and we never read the subtext. The subtext being what's going on behind, what is going on at a deeper level behind the scenes. And, it's like if you go to a party or you go to a meeting, and somebody is with you and they're trying to get a message across, but you don't want the other people to know that they're trying to give you a message. You have to understand the subtext of what do they mean, because often a person, to be polite, they won't say let's go. They'll kind of, we have a meeting, and if you can pick up on the subtext, you realize that they're basically saying it's time to go, that maybe there's no point in being here, these people are trying to sell you something, or it's not going to be it's not appropriate, or whatever it is. Subtext is very important. So I think a challenge is there's two ways to look at this. I think on one level, a challenge in today's society is that because people today are being raised more and more in an insular kind of way, whereby their life is a bubble. They don't know, bubble A doesn't know what bubble B is thinking about. So the old image we had of the Renaissance man, the Renaissance woman, the Renaissance person, somebody who knows a bit of everything, is sadly lacking. So for many of us, we've become specialists. Nothing wrong with being a specialist. You can make some money being a specialist. But often we don't know what people do in other careers, lifestyles, etc. And that leaves us lacking many skills, coping skills for life. So for example, I live in India, and a very popular way of earning money here is to be an IT worker. And I've met a lot of IT workers, and I'm not saying all IT workers, but many IT workers I meet here in India are introverts. And often they don't have super duper social skills because things are so competitive in India. Many of the IT workers would have spent all their time in school studying, and then college studying, and then getting a job and working. And often they have such a narrow focus that they don't really know how to do something beyond that. And it's something that I have noticed myself in my own career, that from time to time I get people from the IT field usually looking for some help with how do I project myself, how do I brand myself, and, all that sort of stuff, because it doesn't come naturally to them, because to become a success they specialize so much. Okay, so that's an example of that, and I think it's something we see in society today in general, is a lot of people, they don't know what to do with anything that's outside their frame of reference, because they're not all-rounders or specialists. And we have a society, like I said, there's little bubbles all over the place, and people belong to different bubbles. So that's one issue. The second issue, okay, is simply that we were raised in a way to believe what we're told, to fit in. And it worked for our parents and grandparents because they tended to work in the same job for years. And it was all about fitting in and doing the right thing and being loyal and faithful to your boss, and they'd look after you. And some was corny, the old go watch at 65 and all that stuff. But you could be in a job for 40 years. My father was in a job for 47 years, for example. Today, it's not like that. Businesses, often they'll chew people up, and you want people to change within a year or two. You want people out the door. It's very rare for anybody to be 40 odd years in the one job. And so you've got to be working out what they really want from you, because say, for example, employment is very contractual, and they might use lovely terms like you're part of our family and you're special and all that, but ultimately they have a contract with you, and they're just looking for something and going to give you something back. And so we have to understand that before maybe I commit to a great degree to a business, for example, as an employee, how much do I commit to that organization? Because ultimately they're just paying me a certain amount of money. And usually they're not going to give me massive increases in money. I'm usually going to have to job hop to get increases in money. So we have to understand subtext when it comes to a business. We have to, as in a sense of if you're an employee, you have to understand the subtext as to what is the company really saying, because companies will say corporate kind of blurb, and that corporate kind of blurb is not very honest, and it has all this we love you hugs and kisses and all that, and the next thing they're kicking you out the door. So a big mistake you go to make in life is if you believe what you're told by your boss. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I'm just saying that companies are looking after their own self-interest. And I do feel that a lot of, I don't know if they learned this in HR school or something, when people go off to do an MBA and HR MBAs, or it's just behind the scenes in businesses. But it seems to me that by and large, there's an active policy in most companies to screw their employees. And what I mean by that is things like, they'll say you're valued, but then they won't pay you big increments. Often the longer you're in a company, the worse the increments they give you. And you kind of ask, why is that? And it's kind of clear and obvious that they are trying to pay you less, and they're not very loyal and faithful. So they're just saying something to you to butter you up, to keep you on side, but they think of you as an asset. And I think this is a very interesting word that you have in the world of HR. You're an asset, because the problem I have with saying that an employee is an asset, it's like I own an asset. Well, you don't own an employee. You have a contract with an employee. They work so many hours, you pay them so much money, or they have some performance-related bonus. Personally, I would say an employee is a resource, not an asset. So I don't know why they have that language. I think it's a very disempowering language to say that, they're an asset, because it kind of suggests that, because, see, is your house an asset? Your house probably is an asset, because usually go up in value. Is your car an asset? Not really, because technically they can declare it an asset from a point of view of, taxes and stuff, but they devalue pretty quickly. I wouldn't call that an asset. Assets tend to go up in value. So does having an employee, do they go up in value? Maybe, but they're not yours. You don't own them. So how can they be your assets? No, employees are actually resources. And I personally feel companies should see employees resources, not assets. Because the problem with an asset is not a person. You've objectified them. They're now a thing. And so we see that now lately in the news. The big thing now is back to the office for the IT workers, because you can't be trusted outside the office. And probably the big fear actually is that people are going to double job. They're going to moonlight, and if we make them go to the office a few days a week, they can't moonlight. And that's the real reason. And that again gets back to subtext. You see, I can't tell you, come back to the office because I think you're cheating, because you go mad. So instead of saying, you have to go back to the office, more productive, you got this office here, blah, blah, blah. Because actually, logically, it doesn't make sense to come back to the office, because if 90% of corporate workers work from home, they could get rid of these huge rents on these massive corporate offices that cost, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars a year to rent. And all the facilities are extremely expensive. So somebody could be getting $50,000 a year. It could cost them $50,000 for their salary, another $20,000 for taxes on that salary, another $50,000 for having all the facilities to have them sitting on that seat. So that employee that's being paid $50,000 could be costing the organization $120,000, $150,000. Seriously. It was so much better if they work from home. So the only reason I think that companies would want people to go back to the office is that they fear that you're going to cheat. And I think a big thing in the world of offices and office politics and all that is really that they're scared of that you will be in power. So if I go back to, say, my father, for example, he was an avid trade unionist. He used to work in Dublin Gas Company, which would later become Board Gas, which is a semi-state body. And when he initially was there, he was a fitter turner. So the guys who, if you got gas in your house, you do all the piping and all that. Initially, they had to buy their own matches. It's terrible. Back in the late 1940s, they had to buy their own matches, and they had no gas masks. They had so much things, and worked 6 days a week. And so they started striking, and actually they got a lot of things. Sadly, what happened back by the 1970s, the trade unions become so powerful, certainly in Ireland and the UK, and probably many other countries. They became so powerful that they were just having, Jimmy down in engineering says there's no proper tea machines. So we're going on strike. The whole factory will close down for a day or a week because Jimmy didn't have his tea machine or something. So it became ridiculous, and sadly they shot themselves in the foot. The initial idea of trade unions was good. They became so powerful, they actually started to threaten the economy. In the UK, for example, for a while they went to a 4-day week. They had a huge car industry, they had a big bike industry, huge car industry. They destroyed their bike and car industry because their cars were totally unreliable, all this trade union thing. And it's sad because after that in the 1980s with Margaret Thatcher, and of course in Ireland they just copy what the Brits do, so sadly what they did was they start coming out contract. And this is a wonderful thing, contract. So my father, for example, had a non-contributory pension. So he just got a certain pension. It didn't matter on contributions. Now you have a wonderful system called contributory pension, which means you only get out what you put in. And so the company doesn't really have to get involved. Many companies, they give less and less. If you're a contract worker, they give less and less service and value to you. We also see the promotion of gig culture. And I've done quite a few gig jobs. And gig jobs are great as a side hustle, but as a mainstay, they're rubbish because people need to pay their rent or their mortgage every month. People need to put food on their table every day. Okay, and to have something where you make $2,000 this month and zero next month, well, that doesn't fly. And a lot of these gig jobs, I mean, for example, you would have had back in the day, say a company has van delivery guys, and the guys are delivering things. And let's say to run that, to pay a guy to drive a van, you pay him, say, $25,000, and then to run the van costs another $50,000. All the expense of the fuel, the repairs, the repayments on the things. It's $75,000. So these wise people came up with the idea. We just say to these people, "Hey, why don't you go off and work for us as contractors, and you just get your own van, and we'll pay you $60,000." Now, sounds good on paper. So they get 25, we get 60. Remember, it's costing $75,000 to run that van. They've done all the statistics. They know that. So by getting you to work for them for 60 means they're saving 15,000. And you're losing 15,000 because it's costing you that 50,000 to run that van. And that's a reality. So many gig jobs are like that. There's very few of these jobs that really make money. So that's an example of being taken for a ride. Okay, Uber, terrible reviews from the people who work for Uber in places like America. India, I still see a lot of people working. There have been some complaints, but people seem to usually make money in Uber in India. Probably because of sheer volume of people. If you're willing to sit in the car for 16 hours a day, you'll definitely make money. But many people around the world have said that they've lost money on Uber because they're thinking in terms of, I'm getting say $70,000. Yeah, but how much it costs to run the car? If you get $70,000 and the car costs you $40,000, you just made $30,000, and you're working maybe 80 hours a week for $30,000. It's not very good, is it? So we have to understand the subtext. So I like what Robert Greene is saying about the body language, but I would say we have to understand the meta language, the subtext. What is that company really saying, or why are they saying it? I said in the last video I made, I think I said in the last video, or maybe the second last video, the golden rule, or the rule number one in life, because Robert Greene loves his rules, doesn't he? So I have my own rules. My rule number one is everybody wants your money. So if anybody wants to sell you something, they want your money. If people want you to work for them, they want your money, because ultimately, think about work life, for example. If I am going to pay you, say, $50,000, I must feel and think to myself, I'm going to make maybe $150,000 out of that guy. So I'm paying him, he's worth $150, but I'm paying him $50. And he should feel that I'm doing good paying him $50. Now, of course, I'm not saying this employer is ripping this guy off, because, like I said, his overheads might be $50,000 for the salary and another $50,000 for him in the office, and you have the security guards, you have the rent of the building, you have the cleaning ladies, you have the IT the facilities guys, all these guys who plug you into the computer and all that. So maybe he needs this guy to work for 50-ish because he's only making 150 out of that guy. He's making 150,000 out of that guy, and it's going to cost him 100,000-ish, he hopes. That's what he's going to try for anyway. That way he has a 50,000 profit. That's the way it works. Now, if the market goes the wrong way for him, he might be in a situation he has to pay that guy 100. Maybe he has to, instead of paying that guy 50,000, he has to pay that guy 80 or 90,000. In which case, his profits are down to maybe 10 or 20,000. And this is exactly what I see in the coronavirus in the IT industry, for example, whereby suddenly everybody has to get in line. Suddenly all the IT workers have to work, and so what are we going to do about it? And basically, they suddenly had to pay a lot more. So the guy who normally would want 50, he'll ask for 100, he'll settle for maybe 85. Your 150,000 minus 50 and other expenses 100, your 50,000 profit goes down to 15,000. Companies had to accept. And what we're seeing now is retribution of that, because now they come out this bullshit thing with AI. Now, AI is there, of course, but the main reason why IT workers are being slaughtered like sacrificial lambs left, right, and center is that the companies, although they massively increased their profits in the coronavirus period, they also had a huge increase in overheads. And now they have a huge amount of staff, and a lot of people getting very well paid. And so they need to find an excuse to get rid of most of these guys, put the fear of God into the rest of them. And this is the nature of things with work life, is that it tends to be either the employee is in power or the employer is in power. So coronavirus, in some cases, say the IT industry, the employee was in power. You have to pay me more, otherwise I go to company A, B, C, D, etc. And many people played companies off each other. And once that's over, that situation's over and things are stabilized, now the employer has to put down the employee. And sadly, there's this dynamic between employers and employees. And this dynamic is really about trying to dominate the other. The employers are scared of the employees, basically. And so they find any way to manipulate the employees to work for less, because they know that from time to time they're going to get screwed by the employees. The employees, given half a chance, will completely screw the employers because they don't care about the employers either. Of course, the long-term solution will be for everybody to work together. Also, in general, the employers do far more screwing than the employees, if we're honest about it. But I'm just saying, it's that kind of antagonistic relationship. So I'm not criticizing the employers or the employees, I'm just saying that's the reality. We have to see the subtext, say, for example, in the IT industry, or any job. So when it comes to work, you have to understand the subtext of that organization and what they're trying to achieve. And ultimately, if I'm an employer, I have to convince you to work for less than you are worth, because I have to have a leverage. If we take, for example, a billionaire business person, how do you become a billionaire business person? You become a billionaire business person by convincing a lot of people to work for less than they are worth, and then you take the cream off the top, and that's your billions, okay? That's what it's all about. That's what wealth generation is about, convincing people to work for less or to sell their assets for less. That's basically what it's about. And that's your profit margin, is the difference between the market value and the worker value. And basically what workers are doing is workers are trading opportunity for security, because you could make more, maybe perhaps, if you had the situation, but maybe you don't have, where are you going to get those customers from? And how are you going to pay the rent? So a lot of people, what they do, and again, I'm not criticizing it, I do this myself actually, is they take the security of the job, because we need to cash flow our lives, and we don't actually know how to get customers. And even if we do know how to get customers, we don't have the money or be able to create an organization around that could help me do that. So there's a lot of factors in being, say, an entrepreneur, which hold most people back. And entrepreneurs regularly get destroyed. They regularly get it wrong and they lose their companies. It's high risk. That's the flip side for the employer. Employers are taking continually risk all the time. So the employers are taking risk and the employees are usually taking security. And it's who theirs wins. The guy who takes more risk tends to make more money. but also it can be, you can get screwed as well. So I'm just saying to understand in the work life, the reality that you're dealing with, okay? So this is the meta picture, and this is the subtext. Everybody wants your money, and if somebody's selling you something, they're going to try and convince you that you should buy what they're buying. If somebody wants you to work for them, they have to convince you to work for less than you're worth. That's a reality of the situation. And now and again you might get away because the market might be in such a way that they'll pay you what you're worth. But if they pay you what you're worth, they don't make any money. It's that simple. So see things for what they are. I could go into this in more detail on the area of relationships and so forth. We can go down that route as well. But just to get some idea. So I like what Robert Greene is saying, and I know a lot of people criticize Robert Greene and say, oh, the guy is just talking. He's like Machiavelli. He loves Machiavelli, of course, because he's talking about social power and opportunity. But let's be honest here. We're living in a society, and social power is a real thing, and opportunity is a real thing, and dealing with life is a real thing. So I have no problem with Robert Greene. I don't think he's a super materialistic guy. I think he's a super practical guy. And in this channel, we talk about a lot of esoteric things and a lot of psychological things and so on. But there's also that practical side of life, which still has a psychology to it as well. So understanding human behavior is understanding that second language, which is not just the language of the body, okay, but also the language of why do people want you as a friend, as a sexual partner, as a business partner, as an employee, as a colleague, as a member of an organization, charity even it could be. Why do they want you? They want some value from you, and they're not going to be 100% honest about what they want, because maybe certain things that they want are slightly inappropriate to say. I mean, final thing I just say here, for example, the present situation with Israel and the whole Gaza thing. If you listen to what Israel says over 20, 30, 40 years, it sounds like they want to find a solution. If you look at their actions, it looks like they just want to stress people in Palestine and get them to leave the country. So I would say the meta view, the subtext is, and maybe there has been some Israeli politicians who would like to find a solution, but let's say over 100 politicians, 70 or 80 of them really want to get rid of the Palestinian people. Maybe 20 or 30 don't, but they're not the dominant people. So sometimes it'll flick back and forth a bit, but ultimately they want to get them out of there. From whatever reason, I mean, I take it's partly because of terrorists. They don't like the idea. Israel ain't the most popular country in the world, surrounded by a lot of countries who see it as an adversary. They probably, in general, feel it'd be safer to just get rid of people. And they're willing to do nasty things to get rid of the people. But you can't say that. You can't say, as a country, that we're pro, doing all sorts of terrible things to get rid of a bunch of people that we just don't trust. And we can't even say we don't trust them, because it's really bad to say you don't trust a whole bunch of a whole state of people. So see it in politics as well. We got the U.S. elections coming up this year. We're going to see a lot of that as well. So see things for what they are, and try and understand, everybody has a motive, and what do they want from you. And it doesn't mean they're bad people, doesn't mean they're terrible people, but the more you can try and get into their mind and work out, why do they want me to believe this picture? The media wants you to believe something, salesman wants you to believe something, the employer wants to believe something, your wife, your kids, your husband, neighbors. People want different things, and people are promoted by different things. They want social status, they want your love, they want your company, they want your money, of course, the number one. So just try and see what is the subtext, okay? So he gives, in that little clip, the example of a guy, say, for example, falls in love with somebody. It turns out that person, as they said, a raving narcissist and ruins your life. Because that person wants company, they're a terrible person. So they have to somehow convince you. Again, it's just like the employer who's making $150,000 wants to pay you 50, so he'll make 50 profit because it's 50 for you, 50 for overhead, 50 profit. Somebody who's a terrible person might want you to commit to a relationship with them because he can't find anybody else and you seem to be a chump. They have to convince you to be a chump to accept less, so they will have more. So usually people are trying to find some shenanigans to get something out of you. And it could be genuine. I mean, your local reverend or minister or, guru or whoever, they might want something out of you. They might want you to help society, and they feel that's good. They're trying to think, well, what buttons do I have to press to get you to do that? Charities do it all the time. Some charities are terrible, some charities are great. So I'm not being cynical here, but I'm just saying, if you really want to have more power in your life, try and think, what do they want from me and why? And it could be a benign thing, but rarely will people tell you exactly what it is, because often it just sounds odd. And we're in a society, it's all about social status, and so they don't want to sound odd, or maybe they just it just sounds crass perhaps. Like the salesman selling you a car, he wants his commission, so he wants to go on holiday, he needs a commission. But not many salespeople say that, because I used to work in sales, and if you say something like that, many people will just get upset and say, oh, I'm not going to buy off you, you just want to. So you end up in life being diplomatic, and the problem when you're diplomatic is now you're vague to the other people. So just try and see what it is, see that big picture. And that's the thing, I like that video with Robert Greene. Watch the video if you get a chance, and it gets you to think about how people use body language, but I just want to talk about how people use meta language as well. Okay, I hope you like this video. Please like and subscribe if you do. I'll talk to you next time.